How many languages are you comfortable having a conversation like this in?
That's a good question. I would say anywhere from about really comfortable in about 6 or 8, and maybe a bit more, maybe 10, 20, depending on the level required.
Right.
I've studied loads more, and to me they're all tools. It's rather like you're a craftsman and you chisel something and then you sharpen it up, you use it, then you put it down, it gets rusty, but then you pick it up and use it again. Yeah. So all this thing about how do we keep them all going, it's not a question for me at all.
No.
You can't expect, even if you have 3, 4, 5, you can't expect to have consistency all the time, and these are just sort of rational thoughts which are not relevant really. Just enjoy it and use it. It's the usage which makes you good, I think.
Right.
Whatever your purpose is, work, you fall in love or travel,
sure.
or that's what make it real. That's it for you.
Exactly. But still, I mean, that's a lot of languages as well to have studied.
Well, I mean, you see, I started, like I told you, with India from moment I could speak.
Yeah, let's go back to that. Can you give a kind of a little backstory to how you were brought up and how that made you interested in languages? Because I assume that's I'm not saying English people in general are not into languages, but you kind of need an external input, it seems, to have that extraordinary interest.
I think so. I think just growing up completely from 2 months in India, and we did sometimes go back to UK for holidays now and then, but I very much, all of my early childhood memories are of India, and of all this multiplicity of sound, of languages, of religions, of the people, and all of that package. And to me, language is part of that package.
Right.
And loving it. And ever since, I've always been curious about. I hear a new sound. Oh, what's that? What language?
Right.
So there's a desire in me all the time. It's not, for some people it's a chore. Or my auntie said to me one day, why are you learning Japanese? I said, well, for loads of reasons. To her it was incomprehensible, but to me, it's just attitude. And
right.
So it went on from there.
So you have this kind of almost curiosity.
Oh, definitely.
But how do you then choose between? I mean, you said you had, say, 6, 8, 10 languages that you know quite well, and then you had a lot of languages you studied. Which languages then became the ones you studied intensively? Whether it's because of usage or an extra kind of factor there?
All sorts of things. I mean, I went to a wonderful school, even in India. I'll never forget it, a primary school with a wonderful lady who was very eccentric and marvelous. And we had Hindi, Latin, French, and German from 5 or 6, I suppose. So I was away, and then with the English school system, the private school, I went on, and you add these others, Greek and whatnot. And eventually, but even before university, where I took French and Russian as a degree, I was already, this whole thing of sort of, I hear a sound, I get the book, I start playing with it, I listen to, it's a sort of game in itself, and it's a chase, and I think we enjoy, our nature is to seek and find, and what's around the corner, where's the hidden treasure, all that sort of thing. And I think for me, there's there are very simple pleasures, like the sound, aesthetic, but also I love the thing of communicating, or speaking, especially in unusual language, to someone, and they go, there's that thing, he can speak my language, it's so amazing. I love that, especially going to Asia or somewhere far away. They don't expect it, and I feel that's a useful thing to have for the whole world, really, that we should all communicate some way or another with different languages.
I think that's exciting. It totally is.
I should think many people here would feel similar.
But then the problem, I guess, is that when you say a lot of the powers in the chase, then doesn't it become a problem that we're kind of chasing, let's say, 10 different languages at once, and we end up with nothing, or 0, or maybe 1.5 or something? You know what I mean?
I've never thought of it like that. I think I always end up with something. I mean, just give you an example. This afternoon I was at Alexanderplatz, and there was this group of Russians, and they're all, what I love about, on my travels, I often hear little bits. I think, oh, that's that little grammar point I've been struggling with. I just overhear this stuff. And there was this one Russian boy said to the other, "Zakodь ко мне," come to me. Now I would say приди ко мне. You see,
Right.
but it's a slight different. You know Russian.
Another pronoun.
It's a different. It's a you know, it's the two verbs. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting the terminology. But anyway, it's a typical Russian thing of hadit. Exactly. Perfect.
Yeah.
But hadit means to go habitually. Iti means to go now.
Right.
But it's almost like he's saying, "Come here," but it's not urgent. It's, you know, it's just it's these subtleties you see that don't exist in other languages.
Right.
Certainly not in English.
Yeah, that's what I love about Russian.
You see, every language you pick up different nuances of meaning that cannot be conveyed in your own language.
Right.
You know? And I love that.
But that's maybe what I thought when I was 11. I thought that English had more opportunity
Exactly. It was more expressive for you.
Yeah.
And I know many people who said the same. I mean, I often have a problem even of expression when I'm talking and I suddenly think, oh, I could say that better in French or in Russian or Japanese, because and it builds up, and the more languages you have,
of course, yeah.
And you have to consciously say, no, it may not be perfect, but say it in the language you're using, you know, just to be simple. So you get this richness. You know?
Yeah.
And there's this wonderful book. Do you know this book of Tingo? They're these wonderful little books. I can get the, and they're amazing.
Right.
They talk about languages in Polynesia or Brazilian jungle, and all the words they have for things we wouldn't be able to conceive of. You know.
Right.
And this is the tragedy of language death.
Yeah.
So we don't just lose the word for house or food. We lose the word of way to describe a sunset, or, you know, the human mind has constructed all this stuff. And it shouldn't go forever.
No.
You know, it's terrible.
But it is hard to keep those alive, because
it is.
If you look just at a personal kind of view, I mean, 6,000 languages are so active right now.
Yeah.
You can't learn 6,000 languages to any degree.
Yeah.
So then you say, I can't learn 5999, and then you get down to, I can maybe look at 30 to 40 realistically, or 50 maybe if you're really diligent.
Yeah.
But then boiling it down even further, how many can you reach fluency in? And then you just realize, well, I could be fluent in Russian instead of speaking one of the dying languages.
Exactly.
And then there's a practicality to it, which for me, sadly, is greater than the kind of the feeling of loss for...
I know. It's for all of us. You know, we live in a certain society and world. We have to deal with it, don't we?
Right. I mean, if you're at this conference and you had a dying language with, like, let's say 100 speakers on it, you wouldn't find anyone here, even though there's so many different personalities. So not even at the most specialized conference there is, can you find, you know, use for it. And then I'm just thinking, language is meant to be used.
Yeah.
I agree that it's you're conveying feeling or emotion or kind of the... I mean, language is how to get thought from your brain, I guess, enunciated or kind of spoken.
That's right. Into the world,
right,
isn't it?
So I think at that point what we have to do is improve the active ones, like those that have interested speakers, instead of forcing people to kind of go back and revive sort of the dead, because it's also development, of course. I mean, this is of course a little bit political almost, but
well, all these aspects come in.
Yeah.
Language is not just isolated on itself. There's all these ramifications all around.
Right. Like languages are living as well.
Yeah.
So if you try to revive a language, it might not be anywhere near what it was when it was alive either.
Right.
That's another problem.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't know if have you looked at any of these very obscure, like almost dying or dead languages?
Not really. I would love to, but it's like you say. Although I have a very romantic nature, and I would love to get, you know, some poor old woman in a valley in the Caucasus, and she's the last one left. And there's only so many German young researchers who can go around the world to get the hold of these people.
Right.
And they do a great job. But no, I'm afraid I've never really had the... You have to have a special nature to go into that.
I think so. Yeah.
Explorer type thing, and it's very impressive. No, I'm afraid I just read... In fact, I try not to read because I find it so sad.
Yeah.
But to me, there just is a loss of human ingenuity.
There is.
When you think of all the ingenuity that's going into this thing at the moment,
yeah.
And previously that went into language. You know, people developed over hundreds, thousands of years these elaborate constructs in order to express themselves.
Right.
And it's as if the energy is shifting into all this high-tech stuff that we have. In the developed world, of course, in the Caucasus or somewhere, they're still living in that other world, you know.
I'm actually writing my BA in exactly that.
Wow.
I'm doing it in what we call the Gutenberg parenthesis.
Oh, wow.
And it's a little short one-sentence introduction is that when the printing press was invented, it changed how we communicated totally.
Of course.
And everything related to human culture. And now, when we have the internet and we're kind of globally connected in like a little village, it feels like, because if you were back in England and I was in Denmark, I could send you a message and you would immediately receive it within a millisecond. You wouldn't even be able to time it. That's how fast it is. Yeah. And that brings us back to pre-printing in terms of communication, orality. So the interesting thing with regards to languages is technology changing. Of course, it's changing languages. Yeah. But is it going to change our culture and our kind of our society, or the way we feel about ourselves? Yeah. That's a big question, but
well, I'm sure it is already from what you say.
Yeah, it is, and it's going to be difficult to do in 20 pages or whatever the BA requirement is these days. But I guess it's interesting to talk about also language changes, because you started learning a long time ago. And we talked briefly because you had an interesting Danish story, and you said you'd learned it. How long ago was it?
At least 40 years ago, in my 20s. Because one of my interests is I'm a church musician. I play the organ, and the Danish organ builders are very, very good.
Right.
And I was in Denmark a lot. I nearly went to work with one of them in Aarhus.
Oh yeah, that's a big
Markussen.
one.
Do you know the Markussen film?
I've heard of it, yeah.
They're very famous.
I've been into the Domkirke and seen the big one they have. That is really big.
Yeah, and there are a lot. I was there recently, and I said, it's funnily enough, the lady who runs it now, I remember her as a little girl like that.
Right.
And her father died rather suddenly recently. And I said to her, do you realise? I said, I'm sure you don't realise, I met you last 40 years ago.
Wow.
But it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
Which of course you can't remember.
But there was a change, a shift.
Yeah.
How did you describe it to me? It was something was deteriorating, or
I think my feeling about the language, I learned Danish then, and I spoke it fairly well, certainly enough for ordinary things to get around. And I had friends in Copenhagen as well, and I spoke with them. It seems to me, just very superficially maybe, that the language is sort of eroding away, that the words are getting shorter. And this isn't only, I notice as a linguist, I think it's happening around the North Sea languages, and certainly in English and maybe a little bit in Dutch, French, all these languages, they seem to be, the writing and reading is pretty much the same, but because that's fixed. Yeah. But speaking is constantly changing.
Yeah.
And I have this feeling, every day, zillions of words are expressed and uttered, and many of them are totally unnecessary. And simple things like people speak fast, they run the words together.
Right.
I know in Sweden, I hear all the time, "Vad säger du?" What do you say? What do you mean?
Yeah, right.
And so everything has to be repeated, not just to me, but to Swedish people, 2 or 3 times. So in a way, we're wasting words. Yeah. It's a pity. But that's rather superficial impression I have.
But still, it's a very personal impression that isn't really hard to. You can't really find that. The only reason I can ask you that is because you were there 4 years ago, and now you're here to listen to it, or you've been recently and listened to it again.
Yeah.
And I find it very interesting, and obviously the pronunciation in Danish is one of the big talking points of it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how it just keeps because it's just the endings. Yeah. If you take the English word to give, give, would be the very book formal, very kind of syllable by syllable saying, but nobody says that. If you're on the street, they just say, giv mig den.
Yeah.
Give it to me. Giver du. Are you giving? Giver. And it's just like all the ending is just gone.
Yes.
And so where's it going to stop?
Exactly.
Is it going to be we just end with one syllable? Or?
Yeah. Well, phonemes are little sort of packages of sound, usually with a vowel and 1 or 2 consonants on either side. Right. Well, when you get rid of the consonants, you have an exposed vowel, and that is very liable to go, isn't it? I mean,
you're right.
It's
not just
it's going to float away on the wind, sort of thing.
Right. It's not just the end vowel usually in Danish. It's also it's the consonant before that's going. Yeah. So the vowel at the end obviously has to go. You can't say gi.
Yeah.
That would be silly. So you'd have to change it. But of course, even the Danish Committee of Languages, Sprognævnet, are changing the language every year. Mostly, adding words and changing meanings occasionally, which is quite debatable. Yeah, that was the thing that happened. I don't know if it happens in other languages, but what happened was people used an idiom incorrectly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure this happens in other languages, but it's like the same as don't sell the skin before you kill the bear, or whatever the equivalent is. And people misunderstood a similar idiom. It was like if you translate it directly, it's like he did him a bear favor. Bjørnetjeneste. And in Danish, that means doing somebody a favor that turns out not to be a favor. So it's not a good thing.
No.
But people didn't understand it, so they started using the positive way. And the language committee had to concede that now the meaning is arbitrary or both ambiguous. And that was one of the big ones. Of course, that's been mentioned. But usually the changes they do is like add, selfie or one of these new tech terms to Google. It's just Google. So it's nice to have an official governing body in a way, but it's that the language is in the control of the people. So they can try to say how you're supposed to speak it, but like you say, it's mostly about writing. You can contain writing to an extent, but what about speaking? You hear all the English now, all the English they speak in a very distinct way. They also drop a lot of the sounds that used to be there, and street language. The young kids speak. It's very different from the English that was spoken just 40 years ago. I'm sure. So I guess the big question is, like we just said, where is it all leading to in a sense, and how do we do our parts to? I'm not saying we should keep it the same because that would be boring, but how do we at least conserve so we don't erode it all the way to
we will have nothing to say. It's we'll open our mouths and nothing will come out.
Do you think it's good to make up new languages? I don't know if you're familiar with Esperanto.
Well, I'm not terribly. I admire them. I think it's a great idea. They don't really bite with me somehow. That's what, I was talking about Latin just now, but that worked for a long time as a language of communication for a certain class of people and so on. But I noticed it seems to be. I don't really know. It seems to be Esperanto seems to be fairly popular in Germany and certain places. And it's the nice thing. There's very much a community aspect about it, isn't it?
Definitely,
people they have clubs and they like each other and all that, which is great. But whether it can ever go beyond that, I don't know.
No, me neither. I've just learned so much about Esperanto at this event that it's really interesting to see the development. And it's still over 100 years old. So it's pretty young, I guess.
Well, it's not the only one. There were one or two others, weren't there?
Yeah, there were. In terms of con languages, constructed languages, there are, I guess, billions of them.
Really?
We just don't know them. But the big ones, I guess, right now, the talk of the day are Esperanto and Toki. But I don't see Toki as a language, and I know that's a bit controversial, but if you do a minimalist approach and say you have a language with 120 words, that to me is a linguistic experiment, not a language.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the problem that arises is, and it's like a pigeon. Have you heard of this Papua New Guinea pigeon?
Oh, it's wonderful.
I love it. It's like I had it in linguistics, and one of them was I think helicopter was something like Jesus. Fly tall or something.
Exactly.
Sky, Jesus, sky, fly or something. It was really great, and that's Toki. So what it means is that when you have a vocabulary from 120 words, you can't have a word for like eagle or sea bass. So eagle will be maybe proud bird, and maybe a pigeon would be stupid bird or something. But then it becomes a lot of interpretation as well, because if you had to describe a pigeon and a hen, how would you do that? So to me it's an experiment, whereas Esperanto to me is a full kind of, and it's also evolving. Like, I don't think the idea about Toki is that it's evolving. That wouldn't make much sense if you want to create a minimalist approach. You can't say I'm just starting with 120. That's not a minimalist approach. That's just the start. But Esperanto's growing and they're adding new words. I heard Gavin speak of a word. They added cool. They added cool, which I find kind of interesting for that. But talk about a little bit more about practically studying. We got the colloquial Danish here, and you talked how you like to collect books. And you when you see a book you like about a language, you pick it up, and then maybe you don't read it until years later. But is that kind of is that kind of how you learned a lot of languages? Just find a lot of material and read through it?
Yeah, and very much. I tend to get impatient with courses. I did a wonderful course in Japanese, which was really marvelous, because from day one we only spoke Japanese. Within an hour we were saying, you know, how are you? What is your name? So, you know, all the basics.
Yeah.
And that gave you such a launch pad of confidence,
Right.
you know, that great, I can get on. And obviously there's lots more. I did a Chinese course, which I got to GCSE, do you know that?
Yeah,
UK
yeah,
thing?
yes.
Which is not much of a qualification, to be
Right.
honest. But at least, again, it's just a level,
Right.
and you got there, which is nice.
Exactly. For people who don't know, it would be the equivalent of just below the final high school years, I guess.
I would think.
So you're about
yeah.
16, 15, thereabouts.
Yeah, when I went to Beijing and I went into a school that was very nice, but I found that, to my mind, the Chinese that I met didn't really know how to teach the language.
Right.
I think it often happens. People go on about native speakers, but if they don't have the ability to teach or convey or understand your difficulties,
Right.
you can almost make it worse. Because I remember once in my learning Polish, I put an ad in and I got this nice Polish man, and he was very, very pedantic in an old-fashioned way, and you had to do all the cases slowly.
Yeah, that's awful.
You know, I mean, that's the killer for me.
Yeah.
You know, I want to teach people as a linguist how to teach
Right.
the language to me. You know, as this is what you should tell me. This
Does
is what
that
you should do.
course not exist? The how to teach?
It ought to.
It should, yeah.
It should. You know, and exactly. But so mostly, I tend to get books or, of course, tapes. I love. You know, I think all the ways. Listen. Exactly.
Right.
And all the stuff you mentioned before about the net. It's a lot easier now. And then just go to the country and talk. And often I quite like summer courses. They're a bit more relaxed.
Right.
And there's a community feeling.
They're also a little bit more intense because that's a
Yeah,
deadline.
you create a total environment in
Right.
our language.
It's not like, oh, we have all year. Let's just
Exactly.
take whatever time we need is
Yeah.
a few weeks and then.
Yeah. I did a course for Russian like that in the 60s when I was already at university. It was brilliant because we didn't go to Russia. We were in a lovely part in Austria, and these tutors came from Russia and Czechoslovakia and God
Nice.
knows where, and we had this wonderful concentrated thing. When I went back, my tutors were quite impressed by
And
it.
it motivates learning even more because you have this group feeling.
Exactly.
In your school, it's almost like you're revolting or rebelling against the teachers and
Exactly.
the subject matter because you're more interested in, you know, playing
Yeah.
football or
Yeah.
whatever you
Yeah,
do when you're
exactly.
at that age, right?
Goofing off. And,
Yeah. I mean, by the time you get to university, hopefully you've made a serious choice and say, okay, this is
Yeah.
what I want to do. But
Yeah.
school is, you have to
I know.
go. There's no choice.
Yeah, but even at school, I was sort of doing this approach, playing around with Spanish and Italian, and keeping up my Hindi, and always there's a sort of feeling of almost illicit in a way that people thought, "Why are you doing that?" It just wasn't a damn
Right.
thing outside the school curriculum, and I don't know, just and that's, I suppose, settled a pattern in me of going on and doing that for the rest of my life, really. You know, so. And my father encouraged me. He said, "Why don't you learn one every year?" And things like that. What I found is I actually can learn the structure normally in about 3 months.
Right.
And then it's just getting vocabulary,
Sure.
which of course takes a lifetime.
Right.
You just do your best, don't you? You know?
Yeah, it's funny. People, you know, when they ask you to do that badge,
Mm.
a lot of people say they speak a lot of languages quite well, or they're really good at a few languages. And I always say I don't know any languages well,
Yeah.
because that involves an insane amount, a level of understanding of not only vocabulary,
Yeah.
also grammar.
Yeah.
I'll say I'm fluent in,
Yeah.
and I might say it's my native language, but that doesn't really say anything about the level.
No.
But if you had to say you were an expert in, like, say, Danish,
Mm.
to me, you would need to understand every single grammatical function.
course.
You wouldn't just be able to speak it like a native. It would be understanding beyond that. So there's a fundamental, I would say, problem in the fact that it's just really hard to distinguish between knowing and knowing and knowing. I mean, how
Exactly.
much do you exactly know?
Exactly.
That's why I
Yeah.
also hate the numbers game. You know,
Yeah.
it's like how many languages do you speak? It's not really important.
No,
I think.
not at all. But I think one can help oneself by, for instance, it sounds rather bald and blunt in a way, but the number of words you know. There's a study, they say most people in the world speak about, in their own language, about 500 words.
Right.
It's apparently, if you want to get on in life, you need 1,500 words. It's that
Right,
simple.
yeah, I've heard
Verbal
that as
skills
well.
are so important if you want to make a career. If you just want a quiet little life and you have a little job and you farm or whatever it is, that's fine, that's great. But if you want and so as a linguist, I take that as a benchmark. Okay, I get my 500 words.
Right.
And then I go
Yeah, I've
on,
heard that, yeah.
and if I get to 1,500, I'd like to get to 2,000 or 3,000, and then I feel that's okay, Then I can move on because I always sort of, it's like French and German. I just don't think about, and I've known them for many, many years. I don't bother to refresh them; they're just there, They're just my wallpaper,
Yeah.
So I'm always moving on to something else, and I think you have this whole thing of, pointy or rounded. Will you just go for one or two things in life, or will you be spread out? When I was a youngster, I was always being criticised. Oh, you do far too many things. And you're a dilettante, and you should do. Well, that was because the preferred model was deepness, depth, and whatever it was. And I've gone on and I've done the other thing, and I look around and say, hey, there are lots of people doing this approach.
What was the when you were telling yourself as a round person, how did you kind of apply that to, let's say, the real life, of a job and a family? Because obviously it's easy to have a round life when you're 20 and you just fool around, but how when things started to get serious and you suddenly had things that you actually needed to do, you couldn't just study 20 languages every day.
No.
How did that challenge you?
I've always done loads of other things. After university I went into engineering, and actually I used my Russian. It was quite fun. It was in the Cold War in the 60s, and I was sent to Russia, and I helped sell 4 complete breweries.
Wow.
Because it was this amazing typical Soviet thing of they said, right, we've got alcoholism, we know about the vodka, but we've got this dreadful beer. What we want to do is make better beer, and then the people will drink beer and they won't get so drunk. That's their kind of Soviet thinking. And okay, we'll invite all these Westerners like Danes and Germans and everyone who can make good beer, and they will show us. We'll have and we'll buy the kit from them, and that's what they did on a vast scale.
Wow.
And the Russian girl who's here, she said she thinks it's still in existence. The factory that I saw.
That'd be interesting to look up and see.
She said it was a good brand. So in a sense, it had achieved the target that they set out. So that was fun, and dealing at a high level. These people, you think, gosh, if I make a wrong move, I'm in Siberia or something,
the gulags or something.
Yeah, it was very exciting. It was a wonderful moment. So I did that, and then I've done loads of things in my life. Again, the sort of rounded approach. I didn't want to go. I tend to have a feeling, right, I've done that, that's good enough, I want to move on. I don't just want to settle in one thing.
Right.
So then I went back. I loved the countryside, and my father was farming, and I'd farmed as a child. So I went back for that. And then I went into the church. I was always very religious. And then I went to the church, and I went to Rome, I became ordained. And then that drifted away from that. That drifted away in the 80s.
You went to the Vatican.
Yes. I wasn't actually in the Vatican. I was in a place called the Russian College, which is where they train people, because I'm a deacon. I became ordained as a deacon of the Russian Catholic Church. It's a very small body. I don't even know. I haven't been in contact for years. Anyway, I did that for 5 years. Then that all sort of fell apart, and I came back to farming.
Right.
And this brings me to about 81. And then my dad died in 89, and my mum a bit later. And I kind of went into the linguistic side quite a lot with translating, interpreting.
Right.
So
that you had that from
exactly.
So you just kind of went back to it.
Exactly, and it was always around me, and using mostly not very exotic languages. Just what people ask, French, German, Italian, whatever was on hand. And living in the country and doing my music, because I'm a musician. And gardening, 24 hours has just never been enough.
Right. That's impressive.
And that's my sort of life.
And now you're here speaking all your languages at the conference. What do you think about the conference? Actually, I haven't asked you that yet.
I think it's absolutely wonderful. I mean, I said to you or somebody, I waited all my life for this, because I feel like I've existed in a hole.
Right.
I've got 1 or 2 friends. One's in Italy now. One's in America, who are polylinguists, but the rest. People know I know 1 or 2 languages.
Right,
that's it, and so it's so wonderful just the community aspect, and to see, and it's so lovely to see as an older person all these young people doing it, and like you, and it's the future, and it's I think it's wonderful that from what people are saying, the future has become more open to linguistic work, if you like.
Right.
Which is people beginning to realise the need.
Yeah.
I mean, they've always known it in Denmark. It's like my country where it's appalling, as you know.
Yeah.
The language teaching is going down and down. The worst one, they're practically giving up German, which is a catastrophe.
It is.
Because we all need, German is the power of Europe.
It is, yeah.
Business and everything else.
Exports.
Your neighbours, all about it.
Yeah, and even in Denmark, it's being kind of downgraded as well.
Really?
Because when I was in school, it was I had it from 5th grade. Maybe we even had introductory lessons in 4th, but it's definitely in 5th. Around 5th or 6th, and I think that's when most Danish schools started. And then you have it until you leave elementary school. Yeah. But they're doing it now so that when you do leave in 9th grade, when you're about, I guess, 14 or so, 15, I don't know. You're thereabouts anyway. Yeah. It's too long ago. You can choose to go to the gymnasium, which is the high school, which is basically the access pass to university degrees or that level. Yeah. So you need that first. But if you want to become a scientist, you choose sciencey subjects, and your foreign language could just be English, or you can even choose more obscure languages. But what that means is that when you're giving people the option to forego German, they're going to be left with only their 3 or 4 years in normal elementary school. Yeah. And it's very inefficient, so you don't learn much. Yeah. And when I was doing it, I mean, it's a conscious choice for me. But when I hit gymnasium or the high school, I chose German, so I continued on my kind of journey with German, and I had that for another 3 years. And by then I was fluent. I was fluent before as well, but by then I could understand all of it. And to this day I can understand all of it as well, but speaking has been a problem because I didn't speak it for between after I got out of high school to now. So I like this event for practicing German. I mean, we're in Germany, so it's obvious, but it's funny how languages go lost like that. Absolutely. I mean, I can read German. I can understand when people are talking fast. I even understand slang, and when they speak very fast sometimes. Yeah. But actually producing the speech is something that's so rusty for me that it's actually a little terrifying. Ordering a coffee downtown, you don't want to sound like an idiot, and But I don't know if you've had any experiences with languages going kind of. You used to be really good at it, and then you try to pull it out, just out of the pocket, and then suddenly you realize something's lost here, and you had to kind of fight back.
I certainly do, but I never felt it was a serious problem. I just felt this takes a little while to brush up. That's what happens. Because everything in my life is about muscle memory. I go to my gym every day. I play 4 or 5 musical instruments. I do gardening. All of that. It's not going to happen like a machine. It's all got to be, especially getting older. I've got to work at it every day, and I like that actually. I think, whereas when I just think, part of this, there's this sort of anxiety up there that I noticed. People, it's gone rusty. I've lost my this and that, the other. I think it's because we've come into this machine age. We expect everything just to function like your washing machine goes on and on forever and ever. Then it does actually die. Yeah. But human beings are not like that. They need constant daily replenishment, and especially this thing, the mind. And it's not difficult. You just do it, and you take the right action.
So how would you do that if you had, say, 3 or 4 languages you had a pretty advanced knowledge of? Would you just say, okay, for 15-20 minutes a day I'm going to read in that language?
Absolutely. Right. Just go over the basic grammar. And I love to speak the words even in myself or out loud, because I really think, I read somewhere about a Hindu priest saying with Sanskrit, you have to eat the words. It's like even when you think of a religious so-called, I hate the expression dead languages. To me, the moment you speak it, it is no longer dead. Right. And whether it's Greek or Egyptian or anything, and I think we make them come alive if we want to, and including so-called, living ones are definitely living. But I think you just do it, and just like you maintain the boiler in your house or something, it needs to be cleaned and looked at or whatever. And
Yeah.
You know,
I guess the problem is that we constantly referring to a language as learning a language.
exactly.
But it's not
It's
really
not,
learning, is
no.
it? I mean, you learn how to play.
It's a good
well, maybe
point.
you don't even learn how to play an instrument, but you learn to. You can learn something to memory. Let's say 100 numbers, or you can learn anything to memory. Vocabulary, I guess we can boil it down to. But the language itself, we can't learn. We can only do it, kind of.
Exactly, and I think all you're doing is sort of, in a way, massaging it back to life.
Right.
It's like something that's gone a bit. It has gone a bit dead. It just
Yeah.
needs to be invigorated. Because I've heard these wonderful stories about people who were in an accident, and well, the story. Do you hear the story?
Yeah,
That
I
was the
think
one.
so. The
I've
car
heard
crash
similar
or something.
stories about people who. Yeah, again, the language they hadn't used. I've heard one about French.
It was recovered or
Yeah,
something.
and it really does seem that somehow everything is as if on tape in our
Right.
brain, or is recorded in some way. And if it's touched, away we go.
Right.
It's all recalled. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And all we're doing is trying to activate that in some way.
Yeah, and it's kind of scary as well, because suddenly our brains are truly limitless.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a movie recently that came out where a guy took a drug. It was called Limitless,
Yeah.
coincidentally. He took a drug and suddenly his brain was working at 100% instead of I don't know what the figure they throw around these days, but it's a
Yeah.
very low figure.
Exactly.
And he was just writing novels overnight and remembering everything, and it's very intelligent, of course. But it is a scary thought that we have these great minds, and they are truly great. I mean, it's a fabulous organ, but that it's not even working at half effort.
Exactly.
And we can't really make it work harder either. We can train it, of course, like you said. We can massage it, and we can make sure it stays fresh and up to date. But you can't exceed that biological limitation. So you just have to work through it. And I guess putting the work into it is something that some people struggle with, myself included. I'm a student, so lazy student by heart, I guess. So even doing things that I really enjoy, I mean, the extreme example would be I'm too tired to watch a TV show or something. Oh, I don't want to turn on the TV. I mean, how can you be too tired to turn on the TV? And that's the same reason I give for, say, language learning, because even if you're really interested about it, sometimes motivating yourself to do it can be a challenge.
Absolutely.
So what do we do to kind of, I guess it's motivation, but where do we summon that extra motivation so we become not 5% language learners, but maybe 25.
Yeah, exactly.
So I become really good at it. But I don't know. I've asked a lot of people about it.
I have sometimes. I think I want to learn this language, and then I get to the point. I think it's too much. It's too much of a challenge. Maybe it's too exciting, or it's just the climb is too steep. And then I just do a very simple thing: take it in tiny bites.
Right.
Do something for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. There's this idea that you've got to do hours each day. And in the moment you feel, this may sound a bit indulgent, but mostly the moment you feel too tired, stop.
Right.
And always sort of leave yourself, I would like to do a bit more. Leave yourself a sort of appetite.
Right.
Rather than, it's rather like eating. Instead of eating to feeling full, you just leave a little gap.
Right.
And it's because that's the desire for the next stage.
Right.
And sort of even simple things like, I've got to this page, I wonder what's on the next page, but I won't look.
Right.
Silly childish stuff. But keep it alive, keep it exciting.
Yeah.
I've heard people say that a lot, and I get that from my music teaching. They say, when you learn a piece of music, you can whack away at it, but it's not going to go in. The mind has got to be fresh and lively to receive, because that's what you're trying to do. And do whatever that takes. Take breaks. And when you think, just a little bit, 5 minutes each day is building up to quite a lot over a period of time.
Because then again, you're keeping it alive.
Absolutely.
Because there's a big difference between doing 5 minutes a day and doing something once a week.
Absolutely.
Because then you'll forget something.
Absolutely. The 1 hour a week or 2 hours, one day is better than nothing, of course, but it's not going to build you that sort of strength.
Right.
I think you want to feel like you've got you've built like a wall, as it were, or something solid. Whereas I think very often those few long periods they're going to evaporate.
Right.
They won't take hold. Another simile is, as a gardener, I know I plant these seeds, and I don't expect much to happen right away.
Right. Of course.
Sometimes I read a bit and I think, wow, I've got that, but I haven't really.
Right.
But I go back to it, and it gradually sinks in, and then the thing starts to grow.
Right. You know what my analogy to that is when I took the driving lessons when I was 18.
Oh, wow.
The first time they get you out in the car, the driver is obviously assisting you with the what do you clutch, the clutch, and the braking, and all the pedals basically. So basically, you think you're really good, and that's how I feel when I started Russian. It's like I had a friend on the Skype, and I wrote to her in Russian, and it was like I was writing in Russian from like the first week or something. It was like, yes, and now it's like because I've learned more about Russian, I realized that the more you know, the more you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So that first kind of impression of a language was kind of the assisted driving, the first one. Because then when I got on the second trip, he didn't help at all. So now I broke down, and I failed the clutch several times. I mean, for Americans listening, they're probably totally unfamiliar with the concept of a clutch, but it's a pretty complicated thing to do when you learn it. But that's why I feel language that you need to realize that just because the start seems, everything new is nice anyway, greener on the other side. But if it seems like you're getting a lot in the beginning, expect a kind of a hard period to come.
Definitely.
And then once you've kind of gone over that mountain where you can now understand it, basic fluency, then you just grow and grow, because then you kind of go from speaking to people with the language to understanding complex novels like Dostoevsky or Chomsky or whatever you want fancy. Really, that's what I'm looking forward to. But the trouble periods.
This is it. It's again. It's another analogy for me. Is I love walking, and it's you walk. This is great. I'm starting off. I'm feeling good, and then you go on a bit, and then you feel a bit tired, or then the road is steep. But then again, there are good bits and bad bits, and you do the whole walk, and you see the view, and then you want to do more. It's wonderful. It's a total process. And
but that can be hard to see it as when you're in the middle of if you're going up the hill. But you have to come down again. So it must be the nice things are waiting. One of the only things that I've noticed for myself is when I try to do timers. Because I feel like they call it the Pomodoro methods, where you set a 20-minute timer, work hard, and then take a break, then work 20 minutes again. What I found was that I was doing the 20 minutes and that's it. But if I say I'm going to do 5 minutes, it's very likely I could do 60 minutes or 110 minutes.
Exactly.
Because you just kind of a little bit more, more. But if you fix yourself in and I fear some people might do this. I don't do it anymore because of that experience. But I feel like when people like Richard or some of these people say, oh, well, I study 2 to 3 hours a day, people put an alarm clock and say, I'll study 3 hours a day and then I'll be like Richard. But I just think that you're setting yourself up for not expanding as much as you could.
Definitely.
So you never did like very structured. It was always like how you felt about it.
Well, I did do structured, but maybe as a younger person I could. But certainly, older, my attention span is less. But I use that as an advantage in a way. And then also the thing of because of the way my life is, I'll do a bit of language, and I'll go and play my flute,
of course,
and things like that, and break it up, and that seems to refresh the mind. But when you think another analogy, it's like a meal. I mean, my granny said, chew everything 50 times. And rather than you don't eat a whole steak at one go,
Exactly.
and it won't digest in you and all the rest of it. So that's the way we're set up, I think, mostly. Some people can do. The trouble is, it's like a lot of things in life. We have this sort of hero worship. It's like Olympic athletes.
Yes.
Well, they're fantastic, and I know a lot about how they get there, where they are, and the sacrifice, etc. But that's not going to help most people who want to be fit. It's going to be much simpler, much lower grade, and there's such a sort of gap nowadays. Even like music, these virtuoso players who do fantastic things, well, it's lovely to hear them, but most of us are never going to get that level, and we shouldn't think of it. We're wasting our energy.
And it's very hard to learn a language if you're thinking about the 9 next ones you're going to learn. It's like Anthony's presentation from Budapest. I don't know if you've seen it. He did the way to learn 10 languages was to learn 9 and then add 1. And then he went all the way down to, if you know no languages, the way to learn 1 is to add 1. If you know 1 language and you want to know 2, add 1. It's always adding 1.
That's a good thing. I can see
You need to focus the mind on 1, and that's why actually what I do is, when I was starting to do research for this, I discovered that a lot of people did multiple languages at once, like studying it quite seriously, spreading their time. And I can see how for a mind perhaps like yours that like to go in multiple directions, perhaps that's good in a way, but for me I'm just worried that I'm going to spread myself a little bit too thin. And so I decided to go with one language at a time, foreign language. Of course, when I get to a point in Russian where it's natural and fluent and I can read and write and not worry about anything, then you could start a new one.
Definitely.
But I think the problem is like, I want to learn Russian, Swedish and Polish. And you just start with 3 books. I mean, that's going to be hell, I think. Yeah. But I think some people do that though.
Well, you could think of it like like a school timetable. You know, through the day you have an hour. This is just if you've got the discipline and the time, even just in tiny chunks, in 5-minute bits, you might try that. Or you might, I mean, at the moment I'm always, Japanese is sort of eternal for me at the moment. I'm quite good at it, but I want to get to a level where it's better. So I do a lot with that. But then I do little bits at the moment. I'm doing Vietnamese and Tagalog,
right?
And they're completely different, which is great. Because I do families together, but then they do get confused.
Yes.
But that doesn't matter, it's just one of those things. So that's my approach. I have a sort of a main one and a little, like a main meal and a little salad on the side, sort of thing.
Yeah, if you get annoyed or bored with the main one, you can always do a little.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
I think that's fine, because then you're kind of cultivating the small language into something that could become the main one later.
Exactly.
But you're not restricting the main one because of that. It's just a side thing.
Yeah.
I mean, but some people are very serious about it, I suppose. They use 8 hours a day. And I just don't understand how they can do that. Because even if you're really, really, really interested about it, 8 hours is a long time. It's a third of the day.
It's amazing. I wonder, you see, a lot of these things have to do with temperament. I've got a friend in Stuttgart who's a fantastic musician and organist, and he has a class, for some reason, female Koreans love to play the organ. For some reason, it's not acceptable for male Koreans.
Oh, really?
But there's some strange they have all their sort of things. Men do this, men do that, women do etc. Okay, that's fine. But he says these girls, they practice 8 hours a day. I mean, I don't know how their backsides don't. It's sitting on the bed, and he says it's just not necessary. And even a good classical musician at an early stage might do up to 4 hours a day, up to half that. But 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, do something else. But he says it's insane, and he says they're very good already. It's just their kind of work ethic, their whole Buddhist thing of you've got to push. But it really isn't necessary.
No,
it's
and there's no pressure. There's no time deadline. I mean,
and this is in Germany. Already Germans work hard. They don't need to go that
right. I mean, if you're learning a language, if you do it in 3 months, you're a genius. If you do it in a year, that's great. Yeah. I said this recently as well. It's like if you could imagine yourself a year ahead in the time, looking back at where you are now, and saying, I know Russian now, and it only took me a year. Yeah. I'm not saying, it took me a whole year to learn Russian, right? I mean, that's ridiculous. Who would say that? It's like you learned a foreign language, completely foreign language. It wasn't even close to anything you've ever learned in a year. Yeah. And then people are like, but I want to do it in 3 months. Yeah. Why?
It's just absurd, aggressive competitiveness or something, isn't it? They're arbitrary concepts.
Exactly. People are different, and I just think that you're setting yourself up to be disappointed and fail.
I think so.
Like, my original goal was to be able to speak Russian here at this conference. So I started in February or so. It's not a long time, and it's in final, there's exams and everything, so it's not like I could just devote an unlimited amount of time to it. But I've just gone and said, okay, that was my goal. I haven't quite reached it, but I will do the goal of December 31st. Yeah. And no harm done. Yeah. But if you really set yourself up for that, you could be demotivated, and you could find yourself not wanting to try again.
That's right. That's exactly. And you've given yourself a period of relaxation that will actually, I think, make you learn better than thinking, I've got to make this deadline. Because that's a silly thing to do.
I really like the concept. I think he's here at the conference, the guy who writes the POLYGLOT. I really love that concept of learning one language a year. Oh yeah, because it's a nice 12 months.
That's what my father told me to do. Yeah, it's quite a good idea.
I think that's perfect.
Yeah, and there's a natural rhythm. I think we are governed by times and seasons and
Of course.
weather and all the rest of it.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, we could talk for hours, I feel like, and I'm sure we'll talk again during the next few days. But for now, I just want to thank you for taking the time to go on record with some of the stuff and share some of your stories. And it's been a real pleasure to have you here on the show. And again, I'm sure we'll talk again at some point.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure for me too.
No problem. Now it's time to go and
oh gosh,
get photographed.
Oh my
so
god!
We need to go to makeup.